Okay, we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to
Hello.
another Meet Cute Monday. It's great. We finally get to talk about more romance stuff. I feel like it's like all week. Everyone's like, "Oh, when's the next one?" I'm like, well, Monday. We get to chat. So anybody who is watching, if you want to go ahead and leave your questions in the chat box, we will get to them as we roll. Anything particularly eye-grabbing, we'll go ahead and shout it out and we will pin it to the video. Rocky, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Racquel Marie or Rocky. I've been known as both. I am a YA author. My debut novel, Ophelia After All, comes out on February 8th, 2022. I'm not used to getting to say the date now, so now I have to remember to actually use the specific date.
And do you have the cover on your phone?
I do. It's my wallpaper.
Okay, pull it up.
I might pull away my tags, but you can see. Oh, there. So there's the cover. Ignore like the time and other stuff on front. Yeah, I'm glad I have it as my cover. That was very useful, but it also is like exposing myself as having my own book cover as my wallpaper. And it is a young adult contemporary novel about 17-year-old Ophelia Rojas, who has a really strong sense of self. She's a chismosa. She's a hopeless romantic. She loves rose gardening. She loves having crushes on boys. And then she begins to question her sense of self and her sexuality when she begins to fall for one of her female classmates in the weeks leading up to their senior prom and high school graduation. So that's my elevator pitch.
I mean, I'm glad that you nailed the elevator pitch because I feel like you're still so in advance of like actually releasing. So like, I love that you're like elevator pitch nailed. You're good. Like
yeah, I got that one down.
Yeah, it's like I'm like it sounds so cute. Like I'm so excited to read it. Yeah, let me pitch my book. I'm author of Meet Cute Diary. It is a YA rom-com about a trans boy who runs a romance blog. When the blog is exposed as fake by a troll, he has to stage the ultimate romance with one of the blog's fans, and it is a rom-com of disaster level chaos with a main character who is so fun to laugh at. Just trying to make his way and prove that trans people also deserve their own perfect happily ever after. So that is the concept of the book.
Yes, I'm so excited for it.
Thank you. I feel like out of nowhere, it just suddenly was like upon us because I was like, oh yeah, like the book is months away, and then I was talking to like the bookstore that I'm going to be doing my launch with, and they posted a thing that was like 45 days. I was like. I was like, oh crap. So, getting geared up for that. Okay. So let's jump into the questions. So my first question for you is, where did you draw the inspiration for Ophelia After All?
So basically my life. So I, very similarly to Ophelia, grew up thinking I was like super totally straight, like nothing to see here. And I liked a lot of boys. I had crushes like constantly to like an absurd degree. And so I never really like thought about like anything else. I was like, well, I already have my share, my fill of romantic potential here. And it was really like my senior year of high school that it sort of started to settle that I was attracted to a friend that I had, and I was like really in denial about it and would constantly do the thing where I was like, if I lived in a society where like being queer was normal, like I'd probably not be straight. It's like, well, that sounds like you're not straight then. And so I sort of like wrote it down on a slip of paper and like tucked it away and was like, okay, cool, that was it. Like I'm not gonna deal with it. And I didn't. And so a few years later, when a lot of things in my life were sort of falling apart and I was in this weird position of feeling like I want to like be out as queer and I want to like navigate the world as a queer person, as someone who's like interested in developing queer relationships. I don't want it to just be something like in my head. It was around the time of NaNoWriMo of 2017 and I didn't have a plan. And so I wrote the first line, which is no longer the first line, but I sort of wish at times that it was, because it was for a prologue that I deleted. But it was, if I'm being honest, I sort of miss being straight. And because that's how I felt. And I was like, oh, I don't like having to like think about identity and relationships and all this stuff. Like so much easier just being like totally heterosexual. And so the story started developed from there. And as time went on, I differentiated like our story and our experiences in ways that I thought made it for a more compelling story. But it was definitely rooted in my own like confusion at realizing around like 17, like, oh wait, like maybe I'm attracted to more than just men, and maybe it can be like anyone. Like, oh, now there's like not gender isn't real, so like anyone's gay. It's like sort of that realization of not knowing everything about yourself, and the scariness that comes with that, and then also specifically with queerness and queer identity.
I love that too, because I'm like, I mean, obviously, like, you know, this is like your story and like this is like your experience, but I feel like it's such a common experience, like this idea, like you grow up in a society where everyone's like, you're straight, like you must be a girl, you must date a boy, you must get married and have kids, and you're like, okay, fine, whatever, do whatever you say, like whatever. And it's like, it's so funny because I feel like what you were saying about the whole, like, if I was, you know, if I lived in a different society, I'd probably be queer. And I remember growing up, I was like, you know, I wish I was a man. I wish I was a gay man. You know, I just feel like a gay man, but you know what? It's fine. Like, I just wasn't born that way. And then, you know, it never occurred to me, oh, you know, maybe you're just trans. Like, that literally would just be like a thing that could be, yeah. And it's just, I feel like it's so funny because I feel like we do get so, like, caught in, like, people telling us, you're this, you're that, you must do these things. And then it's like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you're thinking like if I was in a different circumstance, I'd probably be this thing. You may be that thing. Like those feelings may be yours, and maybe it's just we live in a society, and that society sucks. Like
society sucks.
Yeah, and that's what's so shitty is like being queer. I feel like is a gift, and like I had this conversation recently with Jake Maya Arlo, who may be watching. Like that queerness is such a gift, and that you are able to branch out of like the confines of what your life is supposed to be, and that's what I think is really cool about like queer romances, and because it breaks out of like those conventional like relationship norms and what like roles are supposed to be, when you don't have to think about sexuality and gender to that same degree. You can be like, well, there's like actually a lot more out there than just like man and woman, wife and husband. Like you can explore those things.
Yeah, and like I feel like I feel like that's something that I love too, like especially like with like I feel like where YA fiction is like going, because like so like I first read like my first like queer YA, like not like, oh, there's a casual side character that no one really pays attention to, but like an actual like queer YA, I think like maybe like 5 years ago. And so like I feel like back then, which is not even that long ago, but back then I feel like it was like, oh, like your story is like, you know, boy realizes he's gay, or like girl realizes she's a lesbian, that's it. And it's usually boy realizes he's gay. It was usually white boy realizes he's gay, and like that's it. And you're like, okay. And like I feel like now, like just like looking around, because like I mostly read queer books, I mostly talk to queer authors, just like looking around at like the landscape, there's so much. There's so much, and like so many different experiences and so many different like ways of expressing even like similar experiences. And I feel like it's like one of those things where like I feel like, you know, if I was like 5 or 10 years younger than I am, I feel like I would have like had books like this like at a young enough age that I wouldn't have been like, oh, maybe I just wish I was a guy, but like I can't be a guy. Like I would have been like, bitch, you're trans, like stuff like that. Like, that's it. Like, so yeah, I feel like that's like I love that there's like so many people stepping into that landscape now and just like branching it out and just like making so much, like there's so much, like I mean obviously there's still like limited access in like certain ways, but I feel like there's like the amount of access is growing so much, and it's just like welcoming so many more people.
Yeah, and that's really exciting because like as YA authors, like our audience is teenagers, children, and so it's really exciting to think about like them having the stories that maybe we didn't have access to growing up, and getting to feel recognized and seen and explore those aspects of their identity. Like that just makes my heart really happy to think like, oh yeah, kids are gonna get to have like more freedom in their identity and more representation beyond just like even this sort of like forced binary that was put on queer stories. Like they're gonna get to expand past that, which is it's very exciting.
It's so exciting. And I'm just like thinking about like you were saying like about the idea of like having a crush on like a friend like in high school, and I'm like, I feel like so many people like will look back and be like, oh crap, you know, I had a crush on that person, I didn't even realize it. like I didn't realize, like it was literally, I was in college when I realized that I had a friend back in like elementary and middle school that I had a crush on, and I was like, that's what that was. That is what that was.
Yeah, I was about that age too when I was recognizing, I was like, okay, this is like the first girl I've ever liked, but also is it like this is the first one I've recognized as it was happening. But you look back on like childhood memories, middle school and stuff, and you're like, oh wait, that was like really not straight of me. Like that's not, especially for me, because like my first crushes on boys was like kindergarten, so I'm able to say like confidently I was capable of developing romantic attraction to people at this age. Like that was definitely in my capacity.
I just love the idea of like all these kids like who were gonna be like who will be like where we were, who are gonna be like, oh wait, this is a crush, and they can like actually like do something about it instead of being like looking back like 5-10 years later like, oh.
Oh yeah.
Oh. So much hope for the future kids, like just how much access and like ability they're gonna have that we just never had.
I know. I'm very excited for them.
Okay. Let's go to our next question. Oh, I love this one. Okay. What's an expression of love from your book that you especially enjoyed writing or that really stuck with you?
I have one that I really love, and I can't specify what it is because it's like spoilery or like I want to save it. But in my book, I feel like the greatest gestures of love are things that are considered conventionally romantic, but are done in platonic ways, which like, or in platonic relationships. Again, I'm being so obnoxiously vague about this, even though I love this question. But like, I think I can clarify like the specific type of love, which I think is really compelling in like romantic stories or relationships in media, is like when it shows that two characters understand each other enough to do something that one of them didn't ask for or like, but needed. And I think this was an example of that. And my agent was actually the one who came up with it. So one day when people read this, I'm going to have to not take credit for all of it. But like, I think that that's so compelling in stories when you can see that between characters, because it shows like a deep understanding between them. And it's like a lot of fun to get to write that for characters too, because like you get to make them all happy, but also you get to like show layers from everyone's perspective of like this is what someone wanted but couldn't ask for, and this is what how this person was able to recognize they needed that and like gave it to them. So I think like the greatest expressions of love in my book are actually non-romantic ones, which is like sort of part of like the queering thing that like I feel like my book is queer and that is about a girl realizing she's queer, but also in that like I think a lot of queer happily ever afters and like what it means for a queer person to achieve that is different than a lot of like heteronormative things of like I'm gonna fall in love with one person and we're gonna get married and it's gonna be great and we're gonna have like our little nuclear family, which is a totally valid experience, but that's not how like everyone ends up happy. And so there's a lot of expressions of love that are like platonic and familial and like platonically intimate, as well as romantic, and also that like binary of friend or not binary spectrum of like friendship, romance, that gray area of like what did this actually mean to me. So yeah, so I like this question a lot, but I'm being obnoxiously vague about it.
So I'm gonna re-ask you this question in like a year, like once the book is out, I'll be like,
someone tweet at me and remind me, and I'll clarify what scene I'm referring to.
You actually reminded me of like there was something I was talking about the other day, and it was just the idea that even if a book is straight, like even if the characters are straight,
I saw that tweet.
Yes, if the person writing it is queer, like the book is an entirely different book. Like just like the way that like romance is approached, the way friendship is approached, like all of this stuff. Like I feel like queer people, we just have a completely different view of like how we like go about all of these things. And I feel like that's like, I feel like that is something too that I feel like you could almost like, I don't want to say that you can pick up a book and like know if like the author is like queer or straight, because you can't really, but like there are books that like that get like hyped as like queer books and you read it and you're like, was this written by a straight person? Because like the approach to like the romance will be so like, you know, like heteronormative, and you're like, this is so heteronormative. Like, you know what I mean? Like I feel like it doesn't have that like that truth ringing to it. Whereas like you can pick up a book with like straight characters, but like when like queer people put in that like dynamic that we naturally include like when we approach like relationships, I feel like it like makes that ship ring more true to you than like, you know what I mean, like a queer written ship by someone who like doesn't get that like dynamic.
Yeah, well that's what I especially think when people complain about like male female partnerships that are written by queer authors who those characters may still be queer or they may not be, but like that dynamic is going to be different when written from the perspective of a queer person. I think because there is that like fluidity beyond just like conventional like you have access to that because your identity itself like breaks down those barriers. But it's also just frustrating when people are like male female relationships, even if the characters are queer or whatever,
yeah,
like that's basically straight. It's like, no, it's not.
It
You
is
look
not.
at that, and that is not straight. And like it's just not. And you can tell because that energy is different. The dynamic between like what their roles in the relationship is are different. And like you can feel that.
Like I saw a tweet, like this was like maybe like a year ago or something, but it was so like it resonated with me and I say it all the time now. But it was like I don't like straight ships because every straight ship that I like has like extreme bisexual energy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is literally it. Like every time, like there's like a male-female relationship that I'm like, damn, I would die for that. I'm always like, they feel like chaotically violent. That it's just like,
yeah, no, I feel that most of my like I'm embarrassed that most of my like favorite ships are characters who like in the show are considered like cis het, it's male female couples, but like they have very queer energy because there's dimensions to them beyond like sort of conventional binary roles for like men and women in relationships. And I'm like, I can feel it. I feel that this isn't, I know it's straight, but it doesn't feel straight. Like
exactly. It just that like that. I feel like when it's like the subverting of like the gender roles and like the relationship, but then it's also just like stuff like the characters themselves always feel like just a little queer. Like you're like
explain it and you feel kind of ridiculous, but you're like, they don't feel straight. You don't understand. Like
it's like I feel like it's similar to the way that like queer people, like even if we're all in the closet or like we all don't know that we're queer yet, have a tendency to be friends with other queer people.
And then you realize slowly like, everyone's not straight.
You know what I mean? And you're like, it's not like I'm looking at you and going, hey, you must be queer. Like it's not that, but it's like something about the energy. Like we're just vibing with each other in ways that like other people, the straight people just do not vibe in that energy. Like I don't know like what it is exactly. Like someone needs to do like a study on it and like figure out what it is.
Yeah,
but, like it's
yeah, I don't know how we do that, but we do. Like it's a very true thing.
Like I just like I'm honest to God, like I would love for someone to do like a study on it because I feel like straight people will be like, that's not a thing, that doesn't happen. You're like, no, like literally, like how is it that all of like basically every friend that I had in high school that I still get along with ended up being queer? Like that's just the thing. I mean, it's like it's so like I don't know, and I don't know if it's like we're just like certain types of people are more open to like exploring sexuality and like end up stumbling upon queerness, or if it's just like we just knew like somewhere in our hearts.
Yeah, well it also makes me think of what we're saying about like more queer books out there for kids. I feel like when you're friends with people who are queer, it allows you to kind of open up that conversation a little bit easier. Like after I had come out was when like more people in my life would then be like, oh, I'm sort of thinking about like I may not be straight, and like felt comfortable bringing that up to me. And I feel like if you think everyone around you is straight, it may not be as easy for you to do that. But if you have friends, so it's like sort of like chicken egg situation of like which came first. But I think that like having that accessibility to someone or some type of representation allows you to sort of like ask that question. It feels like you're given permission to be like, like maybe I'm not straight, like let me think about it for a second. Like
yeah, that's a good point. And I feel like another good point too is like I feel like media is starting to embrace the idea of queerness is not just like, gay men or like, like this like idea. I feel like even like queerness in media prior to like literally a couple years ago has been very like one rigid like concept, which defeats queerness in general. But like I'm just thinking like as a kid, like I knew what being trans was, but I was like, oh, I'm not trans because like, I don't feel like I need to be like, a cis man. And then in college, I met a friend who was a demi boy, and that changed everything. Everything. I was like, oh my God. Like this, I was like, crap, I've been lying to myself. Like, I don't even know how long. Like, but I feel like what you're saying too, like it's not even just like the accessibility, it's not even just like access to like queerness in general, but just like also like I think a lot of people like when I was younger, I feel like bisexuality wasn't really something that a lot of people talked about. So it was kind of like either you're straight or you're gay, and that's it. So like the second I was like, well, I mean, I like guys, so like obviously I'm not a lesbian, and so I was like, I guess I'm not queer, and then it's like that's not how that works. Like there's so like the whole point of queerness is that it's not like this rigid like binary concept that you have to do exactly this thing, like, and so I feel like the more we like branch out, the more we like that gets like explored, the more people are like, oh, okay, I guess I can kind of like like maybe I am queer, like maybe that is something I can like I can like consider myself, even if like the terms are not exactly like aligning the way that you originally thought.
Yeah, no, I minored in gender and sexuality studies, so I'm like obnoxious with terminology sometimes, but there was like a term we would talk about, which is like homonormativity, which is basically like the idea that then like queer identity is just sort of like putting them in a convenient box, and it was sort of done by like heterosexual media to make it more like palatable. Like, okay, we are okay with queer people, but the queer people we're okay with is like only like cis gay white men, which like love them, they're part of the community, but like it became like there was a very specific narrative of what is acceptable, and it was like, okay, and they're people who get married and they have kids and they have stable jobs and they get a house, like basically fitting them into then like heteronormative ideas and being like, okay, look, now we like queer people. It's like, no, you just took queer people and put them into your expectations for gender identities and like happiness and romance. Like that is not accepting queer identities. And so yeah, like more a vast array of different experiences and not just showing like one sort of narrative around certain identities is helpful, because then people realize like, oh, I can be this thing even if I'm different than like a conventional representation, like you said, with like being trans. Like you don't have to be trans in a very specific way. There's like a vast array of those identities, and the more people are aware of that, the more they can be like, oh, maybe I'm not kidding myself and just like messing around, and if I lived in a different society, like maybe this would be a part of my identity.
Okay, this is not a question, but I do want to pull this up because I think this is
That
amazing.
was really not straight.
Johnny says, "I want that was really not straight of me on my future urn," and frankly, I agree with that. I would also love to get something like that on my future urn. I think
that's
that's
really me looking back on most of my life. I'm like,
right. Like
yeah,
everything, you're like, oh, oh,
I don't know if you
oh.
saw recently, I tweeted I found a letter I'd written to Obama when I was in 5th grade, asking him to basically legalize gay marriage and citing my friend who had 2 moms and being like, they're very nice women and maybe this would mean a lot to me. And it's like, good looking out, like straight 10-year-old me, like thank you. 22-year-old queer me is very appreciative of your support. Like
I remember like when I remember I started high school and I met like this group of people. It was like the second day of freshman year, and I was like, okay, listen, y'all, like I want to be friends with you, but we have to get something out of the way first. Do you support gay marriage? I don't know why. Like that was like my like intro to like everybody was like, wait, but first, do you support gay marriage? Meanwhile, I was like, I'm straight.
yeah, no, I used to fight people in high school that like would ever say anything homophobic or were like not cool with gay marriage. I would like get in real serious arguments. And then of course once I came out as queer and then people in my life were homophobic, I was like, oh, like no. Like it's like, okay, no, we're gonna strap on our boots, we're gonna be 15-year-old straight Racquel again, and we're gonna defend ourselves. Like, yeah, no, I was in the Gay Straight Alliance as a straight ally. I was like really just there for my community.
I feel like it's so common for a lot of queer people to just be like these ridiculously like so hardcore like queer activists and be like, but it's not for me. I'm doing it for like my friend's cousin's like stepfather who's like, you know,
Yeah.
that's
It's for them.
it's for them. Yeah, like that was the one. Like I remember I used to be like my best friend in high school. Like I think her uncle or someone was gay, and I'd be like, you know, my best friend's uncle is gay. Like I have to defend gay. Like,
I have to do this. Yeah, like this is for them. Like this is.
Yeah, it's important. Like gotta keep that in mind.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Ooh, okay. If you could co-write a book with another YA romance author, who would it be and why?
Off the top of my head, I want to say Nina Moreno, because I love Don't Date Rosa Santos was one of my favorite books of all time. And I just love how in general with the relationships and characters that she writes in her books, they're so like nuanced and dimensional. And I feel like that's the key to like writing a good romance, is having the characters feel like fully fleshed out people. Because like I don't give a shit about like 2 bland characters. Like they can stare at each other and kiss all they want, but like that is not gonna do anything for me. But like characters that have like thoughts and feelings and anxieties and trauma and like wants and desires, like I want them to be together because like I care about them and I can recognize like reasons they'd be together. And so I love her writing. Of course I've only read Don't Date Rosa Santos, but I'm gonna get Ari Back to Always soon. I'm super excited to read that. But I think she is like top of my list, because a lot of other authors who write like romantic ships that I really enjoy are not necessarily like romance books, but I feel like she's like contemporary romance, so I feel like and she writes other genres, so there's like a vast array of things that could be done with this hypothetical book that I'm proposing. So I think she would be the one.
And she's amazing. Yeah, like I mean, obviously, again, I've only read Don't Date Rosa Santos, but literally, yeah, I know. I read that book and I was like, my life has changed forever. I will never recover. Like,
yeah, no, I was like crying in classes when I was in the middle of reading it. I wasn't currently reading it. I just was like thinking of it and like crying in the middle of classes. And I was like, this is the power she has over me.
she has. Yeah, I'm like, and like, I feel like, I love what you said too about like characters, because I do feel like sometimes when people think about romance, they think about like the actions, like, oh, like when do they kiss and like how do they flirt and like that kind of stuff. And I'm like, don't get me wrong, like that shit's important. Like I, you know, I love romance. I want that shit. Like I need that shit to be good. But like at the end of the day, like if I don't care about the two people in this relationship, or I guess however many people in this relationship, like I'm all for like a polyam ship too, but like if I don't care about the people in this relationship, I don't care what they do with each other.
Exactly.
like I feel like it's so like, and I think people sometimes forget, like I think a lot of people who like talk down on romance kind of forget that, like, you know, we're not just stringing together like really popular tropes and like really popular like plot beats and stuff. Like we are fleshing out people, like we are making characters, and like it's to the point where like I can read a fantasy. Look, I'm always character driven, so I always, you know, I always want good characters. But I can read a fantasy book if the world building and plot is super cool and like the main character is kind of mediocre. Like I can look past it enough because the plot and the world building is great. But with romance, there's not really anything else. Like,
yeah,
even if the romance takes place in the coolest place ever, if I don't care about the character, there is nothing like pinning me to the story. So like the depth that it takes to write like a romance that's really gonna like, you know, win people over and like break people's hearts like that, like that's a testimony to like writing good quality characters.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to have that dimension there, because you like, if you want them to care about the relationship, they have to care about the people. And if they don't care about the people, like, why do I care if this person's happy? Like, I don't care. Like, they're just like a cardboard cutout of a person. Like, that doesn't, I don't, like, it doesn't affect me who they kiss or not. Like,
yeah. And like, I feel like too, like, I think people sometimes underestimate like how much you can do with like a character, like in just like a contemporary novel. Like, I think people are like, I think a lot of times we're like, oh, well, you know, like I think a lot of people rely on, I mean, I do too sometimes when I'm writing like fantasy and stuff, but like the life and death scenario to like bring out like the sympathy for the character, and like, you know, oh, like if they're trying to kill each other, like all this kind of stuff. But I'm like the intensity, like to make you care about somebody who's just like going to school and like, you know, hanging out with their friends, getting coffee, like the ability to like make you like be like, I would kill for this person that like is like so normal. I feel like that's like, yeah, and like we were just saying, like with like Don't Date Rosa Santos, like I feel like that book like nailed it. Like you have like these people who are so like it's just and like for me, like I grew up in Florida, so like for me it was very much like this is real world, like this is literally how I grew up. And to see these people and be like, I would die for that, like that's
yeah, exactly, because you can't rely on the like, you don't have to spend as much time on things like world building or magical systems and stuff like that you have to do in other narratives that make you like have to balance out those things. You have mainly character work to work on, and so you're like, you really have to nail that.
Yeah, and it's like it just, yeah, I'm like I'm honestly, I feel like I'm like always like really impressed by like authors who can like weave a romance that like is so like subtle. Like I feel like with Don't Date Rosa Santos, like I feel like it's pretty subtle, like the whole like setup. It's not like this big thing where you're like, oh my god, like this explosive love story. It's a relatively simple love story, but my god, like
but you care about it so much.
Like, yeah, like I love authors who can do that. And I feel like there's I feel like another one who does that for me is like Becky Albertalli. Like I feel like her books are so simple. Like they're just like people at school doing like, you know, stuff at school. But you're like, oh god, I'm so like I'm so into this. Like I'm so like. And another one is Christina Forrest.
Oh like, yes, so good.
Like, you know, like these are such simple stories. Like I feel like ordinarily if you were like, oh, this is a story about this girl who's gonna like, you know, do this like ballet competition, I'd be like, okay, whatever. But then you start reading it and you're like, I'm gonna die. I love them so much. Like, huge. I love that. Like,
Yeah.
okay. What's next? Ooh, okay, this one's fun. Who are some of your OG pairings? Like, what were the ships that first really made you invested in fictional romance?
I'm very prepared for this. So if I really am on it, because I'm like way too into like shipping people online. I feel like anyone that follows me on Twitter knows that I don't like shut up about these things. The first one that I think I ever got really into was, do you remember the show Total Drama Island?
Yeah.
Did you ever watch it? Okay. So yeah, so I was in 3rd grade when that cartoon was coming out. And there's 2 characters, Courtney and Duncan. And Courtney was like the preppy, like stuck up, like very like type A, needs to plan everything out perfectly character. And Duncan was like the goth, sarcastic, like bad boy. And it was like 7-year-old me's world was like shook. It like changed my life. I used to make like my own little on like Windows Movie Maker with Microsoft Paint. I would make like edits of characters from the show, and particularly them two. I was so invested. Like, I have distinct memories of the episode they first kissed and being 7 and like, you know, it's a school night and I need to go to bed, but I'm like, guys, you don't understand. Like, look at this. This is art. Like,
I look like a Windows Movie Maker. I'm like, oh my god.
That's still what I edit my videos on. That's still what I. Yeah, and I think like the one that's most recognizable for people after that was Katara and Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is a controversial take because Katara and Zuko is so popular, and I get it, I understand it, but like, and so those two are really funny because it's like my 2 favorite dynamics, which are like enemies to allies to friends to lovers, and then friends to lovers, like slow burn childhood friends to lovers. Like, those are my 2 favorite ship dynamics, and I fell in love with them young. Got him in elementary school.
I'm like, watch this, like, or like, we're gonna get into like a fight on this one where between like, you're like, I was like, Katara and Zuko, oh my god, like, I ship this so hard. But I feel like it's like my brand is like enemies to lovers, but like, but I love how hardcore people can go about like ships that you like discovered when you were like 8. Like,
yeah. Yeah, that one particularly is such like a controversial, intense one. And I get Zuko and Katara, and if I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender for the first time at this age, I probably like would want them together. But then I'm like, leave Katara and Aang alone. Like, I understand you didn't get the end game. I relate. I've lost many times like if I wanted to be together. But like, everyone's always online like, they're so boring, they suck. And I'm like, look, I was 7 watching that show. I just wanted 2 people who were kind to each other and loved each other. As like an adult, I can understand the appeal more of being like, yeah, like the yin and yang and like the 2 opposite forces and like enemies to lovers. I was just like a little kid and was like, I love this. This is so nice and sweet. Like,
yeah, I feel like there's like, it's so funny. Like, I feel like too, like looking back, like when I was a kid, I feel like if you gave me 2 people who were like nice to each other, I would ship it. Like, I'm thinking like I feel like every show, like if you were like, oh, who are your ships? I'd be like, literally whoever the main ship was. Like,
yeah, they tell you, yeah.
Yeah, like that was like a thing. But then I feel like, yeah, like as you start to like get like a little bit older, you start to see like, oh wait, like one I think about this, like
each other. Ooh.
Right? Like one I always thought was huge was with Danny Phantom.
Oh,
like,
nice.
So like, of course, like everyone was like, you know, Sam and Danny, like they're so cute, like whatever. And like, don't get me wrong, like I support, like, you know what I mean? Like friends, like lovers, like they're good friends and love. I support. But then I was like, Valerie.
Ooh.
I was like, because they had like that whole like, oh my god, where she was like, she hates the one side of him, but she loves the other side of him. Doesn't know like how do you rectify the 2 sides? I was like, that is so cute.
You're like, oh my gosh, wait, there's some different dimension to this.
Like I was just like, holy, like I feel like, and I can't. Like, I'm trying to think of, like, other ships that have, like, that similar dynamic. But I feel like, honest to God, that's just such a good dynamic. Because it's, like, now it's, like, to truly love this person, you have to overcome your hatred for this one side of them. Can you do it? Like, can the love last? Like, it's just so, like, I love this so much. Like, and just, like, I like the difference between, like, yeah, like, I mean, like when I was really young, like, if you just told me, oh, yeah, Sam and Danny, like, of course. You know what I mean? And I feel like that was when I mean, I don't know how old I was when that show was out, like 9 maybe, but like I was just like, but I feel like at that point I was like, that's when I started to be like, huh, like this enemies thing, like I'm seeing this appeal, know, like, and then it just never went away. Like, it's just always like,
It's always stuck with you, haunted you.
yeah, like, it's just, I feel like the ability to overcome like that like dislike or hatred, like especially when it's rooted in something that you don't understand. Like I feel like with Valerie and Danny, it was like it's rooted in like her belief that he was like evil, but like she was wrong. So like he's not actually evil. So I feel like be like oh my god, can she overcome like this like like belief that he's done like all these horrible things when like he really hasn't, like just I love that. And like I feel like the strength of a relationship that's built off of like seeing a bad side of somebody and like learning to overcome that and grow past it and being like, even though I knew that bad thing about you, like even though that's where like we started, like I still like I realized that you're a good person and I love you anyway. Like,
yeah, see, that's why now I'm at the point, like, friends to lovers is my favorite ship, but my favorite version of it is slow burn enemies to friends to lovers. Because yeah, I saw that tweet that went viral like a year ago or something, and it like changed my life, where it said the reason a lot of people like enemies to lovers or hate to love is because the idea that someone could see all your faults and flaws and hate you and then love you like is like world changing for people, because the most terrifying notion is someone loves you and then discovers something about you that makes them hate you. So the idea that someone sees all your faults and flaws and is able to go from that point to loving you fully is like everything. Yeah, so I see it, because that's like all my favorite like ships now once I got older. And like I spend my free time like looking at ship compilations on YouTube for shows I don't watch. Like it's researched is what I tell myself. I'm like, I'm just researching how to make good character dynamics. This is all part of the process. But those are my favorite types of dynamics, because I think that's like such a compelling thing, and also like shows your audience these characters know each other. Like that's why Insta Love does not get me, because I'm like, I don't believe that they know each other, and like that's valid for them, but like what am I getting out of this?
yeah, right. Like I like a good like Insta connection, but like
yeah.
I can't, especially like I feel like this is like a big thing like fantasy, or at least it was back like 10 years ago. But like you would get a lot of like YA books where like these two people would meet and like have an instant connection, and like 3 days later be like, I'm sacrificing myself to save the world.
And I'm like, why are you gonna do that?
You know what I mean? Like what is this? Like you're gonna die for this person that you've known for like 3 days. Like I can understand being like, oh, I want to save this person because I don't want like like I have a connection with them. But to literally be like, yeah, like if the world ends to save you, it's worth it. You've known this person for like 3 days. Like odds are they're not who you think they are. Like
I'm like, also especially in YA fantasy, never trust the love interest in YA fantasy. I don't trust anyone in YA fantasies anymore. I was burned too many times. So
like I love it. Yeah, like honestly, yeah, no. I feel like once I pick up a book, like my first thought is like, okay, which one of y'all is gonna screw me over?
Yeah, I'm like, all right, who's the love interest? Who's gonna disappoint me? Like,
yeah, like I know, it's like I know one of y'all is plotting something bad. So like I don't know which one of you it is, but like I'm side eyeing everybody, and they're like, oh, this person's so nice. I'm like that one. Like you.
It's you. I detect it.
Yeah, I'm like going back to what you were saying about like watching like the compilation videos and stuff for like ships. I think that's actually like a really like I mean it's like random, but I feel like it's actually like a really valid thing that I think a lot of people don't like think about when they think about writing, is like when you write, like it's really good to know what readers and like people in general like what makes a ship good. And like I feel like sometimes people will be like, oh well, I thought this ship was cute, so I'm just gonna do like like this again. But it's like, what about that ship is what made it good? You know, because like just the fact that you found these people cute, like if you attempt to like duplicate like a relationship for like a different story, just changing one element could remove the part that people actually loved about it. Like, so I feel like one of the best ways, like people always talk about like, oh, like the best ways to learn how to write, and like, read widely and like, take classes. Yeah, all that's good. But one of the best ways to learn how to write is just participate in fandom. Like just participate in fandom, like learn what people love, learn what makes people like connect to it, what makes people like go rabid for it. Like, you know what I mean?
And
like,
even like what you find compelling, because then you can discover what types of dynamics you would find interesting. I have like a dream project series that I would love to write, and I changed the central ship, like what the dynamic will be after Brienne and Jaime from Game of Thrones. Like after the way that ended, I was like, all right, this isn't friends to lovers anymore. This is gonna be slow burn enemies to lovers. I'm tired of losing. I'm gonna give the people what they want. Like it changed a story that has meant a lot to me, because I was like, I realized I find this way more interesting and compelling, and it would be more fun to write and also make more compelling for audiences.
Like, I feel like I have gotten into so many like fights, but like so many like fights with people where I'm like, oh, like this ship is better because like blank, and they'll be like, I hate that ship, and I have to like defend my ship to the death. And I feel like having to defend my ship to the death has made it so like concrete for me why I love that ship, like why that ship was like so important to me, or like, you know, why so many people connect with it. And I feel like just like getting into the head of like, you know, fandom is a thing for a reason. Like, you know what I mean? Like anyone can read a book and then move on and do like something else. But like only certain like stories, certain like shows and movies and stuff are so important or like so like impactful to you that you will spend, you know, 30 hours a week just making like compilation videos or writing fan fiction or drawing fan art. Like finding those stories that like make you like want to spend hours of your time just doing stuff for that, like that for that show or whatever for free, like finding those stories and realizing like what it is about them that makes them so compelling. I feel like that changes the game as a writer, because now you're like, okay, like this is not just a ship, this is like the ship.
This is it, like
you know, and like
100%.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something that a lot of people almost shy away from, because they've been told so often, like, you know, don't you like, one, you don't want to like copy other people's stories, but two, they also get told things like, you know, like stop doing fan service is bad, and like, you know, should only write things that are like, you know, of literary merit. And it's like, write stuff that's enjoyable, like write stuff that's enjoyable.
Fan service is good sometimes. If I feel like so many like stories nowadays, like I thought I was gonna make it through one conversation about romantic ships and not bring up Bellamy and Clark from the 100.
I knew it was coming.
That's like, it's not gonna happen. But like so many shows and movies and franchises recently, especially things that are more in like sci-fi or fantasy range.
I was like, especially the CW.
Try to be like, we're gonna subvert expectations, and it's important for characters to be like sad and die. And it's like, okay, I get that making your like, you want to make your audience feel something, but just because you made your audience sad or angry doesn't mean that was good writing. Sometimes that means it was bad. And like, you don't have to do everything in fan service, and you don't have to write your story based on what fans like. But this new thing of like, oh, the fans guessed where we were going with this, so we changed the story and like changed the plot, or like people want these characters together too much and that's too like cliche. It's like, write the story that makes the best story. Like, don't base it off of this is too expected, or this is this, or this is that. Like, if a story makes sense to go in a certain direction, do that. And like, especially when it comes to character dynamics and relationships, it's like, just do it. Like, fan service is okay. Like, it's fine. Like, you don't have to base your story around pleasing your fans, but it's fine to do things that fans enjoy. That's not bad. Like,
like I feel like fan service, like originally people were using it like to mean like things that like were only done to make a fan happy. And I get like why that's like we're not going to do that. We're not going to rewrite the whole book to make the fan happy. You know, but the idea that like something that makes your fans happy is like inherently like worse writing is so ridiculous.
It's the weirdest thing to me. I don't get it. I'm like, why? Like, why is that a problem?
Like it's like if these are the people who love your work, if these are the people who love where your story is going thus far, why would your like ideal be to like make them disappointed? Like, shouldn't your like, if these are the people who are following your story, these are the people who are supporting you, these are the people who are loving what you're doing, like why are you like, my goal is to make sure that whatever I turn out is not what satisfies them? Like,
I will never understand it. And so I know my career is starting off contemporary. I have ideas for things that are like speculative fiction, paranormal, whatever, and I'm like, I'm ready to give like the sci-fi, fantasy, speculative fiction people their happy endings, because I'm so sorry that you've gotten so many like bad, sad ones.
Like the book that I'm working on right now, I swear, like I'm not gonna like give away like a whole lot, but like I'm working on a slow burn series, and like it is gonna be a lot of books, and like the drama and like the tension between those two characters, like up until the point where they get together, is gonna be so ridiculously painful. But like, I swear on my life, they are getting together. They're getting together.
That's my dream series is like a series long. It has a lot of stops and starts, very slow burn, and I'm like, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but like it's gonna be okay. Like don't expect this to be one of them kills the other one or some shit like that. We're not doing this.
Yeah, like I promise you, like, will there be trauma on the way? So much, so much. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt like hell. But I promise you, they will get a happy ending. Okay, they will be together. I swear.
Yeah. Oh,
like, like I'm like I never want to be that author. Like of all the things like that I can do, I don't want to be that author who just completely lets my readers down for like the shock value. Like I just no.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm totally fine hurting people who read my books, but I never want them to feel stupid for caring about my story by like, switching things up on them. Because I feel like that's the worst thing when shows end really horribly like that, or movies or books or whatever. It makes you feel foolish for caring about it, and it's like you should never make your fans feel like they were dumb for believing in something. Like that's not what you should.
Yeah, and like
really not what you should do.
And like I think people like miss the fact that like the people who care the most about fiction, like the people who fall into fiction the most, are usually the people who like need it. You know what I mean? Like I know so many people who are like, oh, why do you care so much about fiction? And I'm like, because the real world sucks. Like, you know, like I get like, you know, and it's like if your life is perfect and you don't need fiction, so you don't understand why people like are attached to it, then like congrats. Like I'm happy for you. Like truly I am. But like that's like congrats. You know what I mean? But like do you have to torture those of us who really are like finding our only happiness right now in this movie, in this show? It's like I feel like it's almost like there's like these handful of like vindictive people who are like, you know, you shouldn't get attached to shows, so we're gonna punish you for it. And it's like, yo, like nobody's like just let people have things that they enjoy.
Yeah.
Like if this makes people happy, like if this harmless thing is making people happy, like let them be happy. Like let them have this thing. Like don't be so like condescending and mean about it. It's just not necessary.
Yeah, exactly. It's like just let us enjoy our thing. If this is what makes us happy and we're not hurting anyone, we're not being like toxic about it, just let us have it.
You know, and like and I feel like I don't know if you know like The Magicians.
I'm familiar with the show a little
Are
bit.
you aware of the like plot twist that they threw in there?
I know that there was something bad. I don't know the specifics of it, but I know.
Okay, so I'm not going to spoil it in case anyone's watching it. To be fair, if you're watching it and you don't love it when like, you know, these types of horrible things we're talking about happen, I would stop watching it because it ruined my life. But I was so obsessed with that show, and they actively like not even just the narrative. Like the narrative supported this like big thing that everyone wanted to happen, but the creators actively said, this is going to happen. Like the fans of this are going to be so happy. And then they destroyed everything. They set it up in flames. And it was just like,
I hate that.
You know, and I mean, it's them. It's supernatural. It's, you know, it's the 100. Like all of these shows where it's just like you know, it just feels like such a betrayal of trust to know that these people are actively saying, we see what you want and we're going to do the exact opposite. You know, like
and it's a very weird thing to me. I don't understand it from like a creative perspective, because it's like it's almost a vindictive thing of like people recognize something in my story that maybe I didn't recognize, and now I'm gonna go against that. But it's like you can change your story, but also like it's okay to do things that people want or expect.
You know, and I feel like there's a huge difference. Like it's one thing, like I feel like, you know, if I'm reading a book and I'm hoping for this like ship to happen and I get to the end of the book and it doesn't happen, like, okay, well, you know, I had my hopes, like they were wrong, whatever, I'll move on. But when you're actively like a show is ongoing and you know these people know what everybody wants and that's why they chose not to do it, like that's just so cruel. Like it's so cruel.
Yep.
Like, you know what I mean? Like you can't even pretend they just did. Like it's not even like, oh, like haha, it was just a coincidence that it happened that way. No, like they actively chose to like spite you, and like that's just so mean.
It's such a weird fandom thing that's happened in recent years. I don't understand it, and I never will.
Yeah, like I no, I'm just like, and like I feel like to like, you know, if you're watching this right now and you're like, I want to do that in a series, I just want to start a book and like wait to see what everyone wants and then thwart them all. Just so you know, like the fans hate you when you do that. Like they hate you. Like they don't want to watch or read anything you ever create in your life ever. They want nothing to do with you. They hate you. Like that's like it's like the perfect way to like sever a fan's trust for life. They will never like you again.
Yeah,
like,
plot twists are good. Like intentionally hurting your fans by switching things up on them in a way that will disappoint them is not like.
Not, yeah. Please, none of that. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna move past our shitting on like the CW, but Okay. Do you prefer happily ever after endings or happy for now endings, and why?
I think I prefer happy for now endings. In general, when any type of media I enjoy is ending, I like when there's sort of an open-endedness to it because I like the idea that there are things these characters are going to experience that I will not get to see. Like it feels more satisfying to know that. But I also like happy for now because it feels more realistic and like gives me things to think about them having in the future. Like if I get to see they're perfect, everything's tied up, it's perfect, they're gonna be happy forever. I don't get to imagine like whatever difficulties they may have to go through that keep them together. Like I feel like it's just more satisfying as someone who gets very invested in like particular characters and like imagining how they would feel about certain things. Like I've never gotten into fan fiction or writing fan fiction, but I in my head I think about like, oh, these characters would love this or these characters would love that. And so I really like the open-endedness of like happy for now, like we're together or we're possibly getting together, like just the sort of potential that's there because it makes the story feel like it extends beyond the end of the pages. But I also do love happily ever after endings too. Like I feel like my preference is happy for now, but happily ever after endings are also like super satisfying for a lot of reasons. And I get why people love to have it like tied up and have the security being like they're protected, they're safe, they're in love, this is great, they're gonna be fine forever.
I feel like you just sold me on like happy for now endings. And I feel like prior I was like happily ever after for sure. Now I'm like, oh, you know what? That's a good point. That is a
Yeah,
good point.
I think some of my favorite like ships that ended together have always ended in a very like happy for now, ambiguous, like maybe we're gonna be together. And I love that because it allows you to be like, oh, like they're gonna work, like their love story continues on beyond what I'm gonna get to see. And like that's really nice to get to imagine that for characters you care about, that like their story exists sort of beyond what you can perceive.
Yeah, and I feel like my fear is always like, oh my god, what if they break up? But you know what? No, like I think you're on to something here. Like you know what? Because I think, and here's the thing too. I think to a certain extent, like growing up, I always loved fan fiction, but I was always fan fiction that like was like with the canon. Like I couldn't like if someone wrote a fan fiction and like I was reading it and then something in the canon like contradicted that fan fiction, I couldn't keep reading it. Like I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. So I feel like to a certain extent, like I feel like I like the happily ever after because it means like they are together. Like there's like I'm not like making this up. Like I'm not wrong. Like in thinking that they're together forever. But you're right. I think the happy for now. Like it's your head canon. Like you can do what you want with it. Like whatever you want to think happens. Like go for it. Like take it for a
Yeah.
spin. Like,
Yeah, because it still gives you like they're happy now. Like this could be someone's version of a happily ever after. But also, if you want to imagine there's more potential in the future for different things to happen, like you have that. So I just like the openness of endings like that.
yeah. I feel that. That's a lot of fun. Actually, I like that. Okay, somebody says, let's see. What character, besides your main character, are you most excited for readers to meet?
Ooh. Okay, I sort of have like two different answers. One of them is Ophelia has a best friend named Sammy, and he was my favorite character to write because he's kind of a little shit. Like I didn't realize how much of a little shit he was until different people had read it and they were like, "Oh yeah, you know how he's like kind of an asshole sometimes?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" Like he's like great. Like he's so much fun. And then I like sort of recognized my own bias. But he's just like really sarcastic, always has like stupid jokes that he's making. He's just like this lanky boy who's just like cracking jokes and sort of poking at everyone. And so he's just really fun. But also, there's a character, Wesley, who is like a soft cinnamon roll. My agent called him a cinnamon roll the first time I ever spoke to her. And anyone who has read it has talked about how like soft and sweet and kind he is. And I feel like he's like what we all want for ourselves when we're dealing with the problem. Like he's like the ideal friend. So I'm excited for people to meet those characters beyond Ophelia, which are two binary differences, and those two characters have conflicts with each other. But my little, it's like the cinnamon roll, and then like the cinnamon roll with like the S. Like,
Okay, but those are like my favorite like types of character story. And literally the two like polar opposites. Like the one who's like so sweet and perfect and like has never done anything in their like wrong in their life ever. Like which I guess for my book, that's Devin, and that's the character that so far every single reader pretty much has said is their favorite. Like across the board, like there were like a handful of people who were like, no, I like Brian, I like no, but like, oh my god, people adore Devin, which is fair because Devin's perfect, like absolutely perfect, and like I love writing Devin. But then there's like I love like and I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I love writing people who are just like shits. Like I love people who are little shits. Like
just like choosing violence and chaos every day. Like
every
day
day.
they wake up and that's their choice.
You know, and like when I was writing Meet Cute Diary, like that's Noah. Like he's a little shit. Like, yeah, he's awful. He's awful, and I love that. Like it was like he was honestly like one of the he was probably like the most fun like POV character I've ever written, just because he's such a shithead. And like usually I feel like people are like, no, don't write like your main character should be like relatable and like realistic. I'm like, okay, but listen, what if I just made him a piece of shit? Like it's a comedy. Like let him be shitty. It's funny that way. But like, yeah, he's like a piece of shit. And I feel like ultimately like the character that I'm always excited for people to meet is Brian, because he's just so, I don't want to say he's like dumb, like in a good way, but like I just feel like he's just so extra, and like he's kind of a loser, and like in a fun, cute way. Yeah, like I feel like he's just, you know, I always want people to meet my losers. Like the more uncool a character is, the more I want people to like meet them, because I feel like I need y'all to understand how like adorably like uncool this person is. Like,
it's so cute.
I'm like, you know, and I feel like when characters are like cool and like, you know, like they're like badass or whatever, like I feel like you're like, oh well, yeah, of course people are gonna appreciate someone who's cool and badass, like everyone. But like I feel like it's like fandoms are so good at like latching on to like that loser and just like blowing it out of proportion. I love that. Like,
yeah,
I appreciate
because it allows you to kind of like yourself. You're able to be like, oh, I love this really like goofy, stupid character that like makes dumb jokes or like isn't perfect. You're like, oh, maybe I can like myself for those reasons too.
You know, like and I feel like not to say like my editor and like stuff didn't appreciate them. Like everyone appreciated Brian, but I feel like I'm just so excited to see the way fandom is like, this loser, love him, and I'm like, I want to see that. You know, I'm looking forward.
I will keep my eye out for him when I.
Like that'll be when I know I've made it, is when people are like, oh my god, like making like, you know, like those like really like shitty Valentine's Day cards and stuff. Like,
oh,
like
yes,
I love those. If someone would make one of those like about Brian, that's what I made it. That's like, I'll be like, that's
sending
it.
out the request.
Yeah, like that's
new author goal.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we are at our time limit, but okay. Would you like to give one last pitch of your book and tell everybody where they can find you?
Yes. So it's about 17-year-old OPHELIA Rojas, who is questioning her sexuality in the weeks leading up to her senior prom and high school graduation, when she starts to fall for one of her female classmates. I'm on Twitter at Blonde with a Book, but the O's in book are 2 zeros. And on Instagram at blonde_with_a_book. And then on YouTube at Blonde with a Book. There's a lot of things. And then my TikTok is Racquel_Marie. So that makes it a little confusing for branding.
I will go ahead and include links below so you can find everything, because I know I know like sometimes like saying these things are like hard to follow. But yeah, and I'm the author of Meet Cute Diary, a trans rom-com about a boy, his romance blog, and the fake relationship that he has to stage in order to save it from a troll. You can find me at Emery Lee on Twitter, at Emery Lee Books on Instagram. You're obviously on my YouTube page, so you know how to find me there. I will include our website links below, as well as the social media. And keep in mind that if you pre-order a copy of Meet Cute Diary, I am running a pre-order campaign where you'll get a bunch of really cool free stuff. We are working towards another stretch reward if you turn in your receipts, so please submit those soon.
I need to do that.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
I'm not submitting my pre-order receipts. I've done it, but I haven't submitted the receipts.
Look, I get it, because I'm really bad about submitting pre-order receipts. But yes, the sooner everybody gets those in, the more free stuff I can add to the campaign. So make sure to submit your pre-order receipts, and don't forget to come back next week on Monday. I will be speaking with another YA author, one that you all will love. She writes adorable rom-coms, and you are going to want to be here for it. So, bye everybody. Thanks for coming.
Bye.